Hello there. This is Dr. Dax. I hope everybody out there is doing well. And welcome to class. Welcome back to Web Analytics. Excuse me. Sorry. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to pause while I call. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, we're back and we have just a couple of weeks left, looks like. We're going to be rounding out our course on December 19th. That's the official close date. And so I want to go ahead and talk about some material that ties into Module 6 today. We're discussing web analytics and the future. And we've touched on this a little bit in the past, but want to go ahead and flesh that out some more and give you some more history and tie it into what's going on in the present and maybe extrapolate going forward. So let's take a look at our topics for today. We want to criticize the meaning of traditional web analytics. Excuse me. We're going to predict the evolution of web analytics. We're going to take a look at where it's going and explain changes in analytics over the years. And excuse me, gosh, some final thoughts. And of course, we'll be closing after that. So your objectives that I have for you is by the time we're done here, you'll have a more solid understanding of the history of web analytics. I want you to be able to describe the current trends of analytics as it pertains to the internet and how companies use the technology to further their agenda and enforce their vision. And we want to kind of extrapolate where these trends might be going. If you take a look at the current technology and maybe peek into the future just a little bit and kind of do some conjecture. So we've talked a little bit about this, but I want to go into some more material here with the history of web analytics. It really is tied to the history of computer technology, computer science, and the internet in general. But to get there, we have to stand on the shoulders of the Industrial Revolution and go way back. So let's talk about a guy we know as Tesla, Nikola Tesla. He was famous for a lot of things. He innovated a lot of great ideas. An inventor, very, very smart individual with technology and science to the point that people in his day thought he was almost capable of witchcraft. And unfortunately, not a good businessman, but very smart and very giving of the world. He wanted to share his technology and his ideas with the community. And the idea for the internet as we know it is often attributed to him, and I think rightfully so, because his concept, his description of a worldwide compendium of knowledge that you can access immediately on some kind of a portable device that speaks to what we have now. And if he were to be alive now and seeing what we do, he would be one that would be kind of surprised and kind of not surprised because he spoke about it way, way back then. Said, in fact, that one day people would be able to communicate, send documents, music, and video around the world with wireless technology. Of course, everybody thought it was crazy, but it was in his mind that it happens to roll in the bounds. He hoped it would happen within his generation. In description, could be described as Internet of Things, which we talk about IoT. Domestic management, that problems of heat, light, and household mechanics will be free from all labor to the benefit of wireless power. Not clear? Well, it should. It was wildly out of the box in his thinking. And we just wish that there were more people like him now that could sort of think out of the box and come up with ideas that really don't fit within the current mold of how things ought to be currently, but where they can be. He was a person suffering mental say. Another guy, a little bit later on, was kind of a bush, and he kind of took some of Tesla's ideas a little bit further, and he wrote an essay in 1945 called "As We May Think." And it's really interesting. I suggest taking time to take a look at it. He described a hypothetical machine in his paper. He called it the Mimex, and he's showing a picture of it here, and it's a picture of it here. It's kind of a hypertext-like device capable of allowing users to comb through a large set of documents stored in what he described as microfilm, connected via a network of links and associated trails that anticipated the hyperlink structure of today's web. So his thinking was more in terms of an abstract network, and his design could almost be described as parallel networks. So conceptualize the internet as well, even though he didn't call it that. His ideas were timely and ahead of his time. He also created the first digitally stored data. And moving on to the 1960s, and we're kind of skipping through history a little bit. There's lots of little stops along the way, but I'm trying to hit the high points and give you the icing on the cake, as it were, so that we can hopefully get the most out of this.
Excuse me. And hope you can hear me better now. I don't know if the microphone is working or not. All right, so guy here, J.C.R. Liddick at MIT proposed what he called, and I love this name, the Intergalactic Computer Network. And I wish that name would have stuck. And he also completed what we would know as the first wireless data transfer. But he was not the first to propose the idea of a wireless data transfer. He thought that he was, but guess who? It was Tesla. In 1990, we took another leap with the first real, what I would call, internet connection. Now, prior to that, there were other examples of technology of sharing digital information over wires, but the first, what I would call a monetized internet connection, occurred during this time. It was the first legitimate connection created by Sir Tim Berners-Lee, not Al Gore, sorry. But if you look back at some of the devices that were created before then, in fact, there were some gaming consoles that took place that were mass marketed before 1990, and they had little ports that you could plug phone jacks into, mostly in Japan. But you could set up local, what we would call now a LAN, local area network for gaming purposes. They weren't really able to catch on in the States until a little bit later, but you could almost consider that almost internet. But I talk about these things because right now we're on the cusp of what I consider to be another leap, okay? Every so often in technology and in our community of science and industry, there are these massive jumps, these explosions of innovation and creation. If you go back into our history and look at the linear data, and you will find points in history at which these leaps occur. So I could give examples like the introduction of the steam engine, you know, that led to the train, and you know, beyond that, electricity. Electricity was created. It was actually mass marketed by not only Edison and Tesla, but other companies as well. But that represents another big leap. And the automobile is a big leap. The introduction of the internet was a big leap. But every leap that we've had stands on the shoulders of the last. Okay? Steam engine led to the production of coal and the faster transport of coals eventually led to a higher level of electricity production, and that led to this, which led to that. And so these leaps that occurred, right now we have reached a cusp where we're about to explode with another giant leap, which is in data analysis and web trends. And we're seeing it happen in this generation. It's really exciting, and we're on the forefront of it, particularly with regard to web analysis and data analysis in general, because all these technologies are starting to merge and become the same thing, coming together in the same conversation. Data analytics and statistics and business science, business intelligence, all these things are drawn together by data analytics and web analytics. So you're in a really good spot right now to be in the middle of that and to learn this technology, which can take you through a massive umbrella of skills and industries. So from here, you can go into Department of Defense, you can go into medicine, you can go into business, education, any field that relies on data analysis. And so that's what I wanted to kind of point out. And as we move along, we're looking at 1993 with log file analysis, which is still a thing, of course. We do server-side log file analysis, web analysis, and server log analysis was performed originally by companies like, I believe Google started it, Web Trends, Analog, Omniture, and some others, because originally it was thought that only companies like that could take this large amount of data, run it through analysis, and present it to people that are running a website. Because originally all they had to go by was hit counters, because the original thought was the more hits I have, the better off the website will be. And these original WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get websites, a lot of them came with that applet, that little operational tool that site can use to tell you how many visitors you've had. So the hit counter was really the barometer to begin with. But when people realized they needed more web and analytics, server log analysis became the next buzzword. But the average Joe couldn't move beyond the hit counter, and so they hired these other companies that we talked about to perform that analysis at a pretty high price. So what we see now is that led to web tagging. And in tagging, that was a popular evolutionary idea in which servers would hold and manage HTML tagging data. And HTML tagging, as we've talked about before, we'll review that real quick. That's basically taking information and dropping it into meta tags into the HTML code that's not readable on the site itself as you're looking at it as a viewer. But if you go into the source code, it can be all tagged and logged and analyzed. HTML tagging and tracking trends turned out to be cheaper and easier to implement. And server-side tagging in about 2005, Google Analytics acquired Urchin and really doubled down on server-side tagging. And at the moment, Google Analytics is the juggernaut. They are the big operators in the area of web analytics in terms of taking it and bringing it together for the average Joe, because they took a cue from companies like Apple and tried to simplify things. One way they did that, they've successfully done, is to integrate the information and make it available to mobile devices, because research and just casual observation even can show you that a lot of people, more than 60%, get their internet transactions done online through mobile devices. And so Google Analytics made their material available in that format. Google Analytics incorporated machine learning into its app analytics, and this gives marketers smarter insights on the go. This enables a streamlined mobile form of Google Analytics experience, showing more relevant metrics, real-time monitoring, and other items. This was a strong turning point in the analytics industry. And other companies are getting on board, but Google got in early on and acquired the companies that were doing it and were really smart about it. So additional metrics that have come into play is we are going way beyond web counters now. We're interested in traffic sources, and traffic sources involve an extended look into where the end user bounced from. Did they come to the website from a search engine? Were they linked from a social media page? Did they come from just direct input of the URL? There are all sorts of different traffic sources, and understanding where it comes from gives the social media analysts and therefore the marketing team a really good picture of how they can adjust the marketing strategies following that. And another item you can examine with web metrics is conversion rates. That, as we have covered before, is effectively taking a look at customers as they convert through the act of purchasing a product online or making some type of transaction, whether it's signing up for a newsletter or getting on an email service, filling out a digital card of some kind. Any kind of a casual viewer of a website who becomes engaged in some activity, finishes it, and submits it. It doesn't always involve a monetary transaction, but the goal is to ultimately funnel them into a paying customer. And that leads to the examination of the customer lifetime value. We're very interested in understanding exactly how far and how long a customer is going to be loyal and to what extent their loyalty goes. Customer lifetime value is important in a lot of industries, but it's probably most prominently noted in the banking industry and that kind of place where people effectively are signed for a contract that's more than 2 years. And if you, I have this on here because last term when I did this lecture, the requirement was that when you did the quiz at the end of your the lectures, you had to put in a keyword. So if it still asks for a keyword, I don't think it does, but it does. Keywords Tesla. All right. So we've talked a little bit about the history of web analytics and some of the technology leading us up to where we are now. Let's discuss the current state of web analysis and take a look here. The trend right now is greatly affected by a growing awareness of the analytics by what I would call a non-techie end user. Why do I say that? Well, because early on, the web analysis was the purview of people who were way into the computer science part. They were into the data analytics and the math portion, and it was a more of a niche segment of the population. But I think it's becoming more and more mainstream. And as more companies are accepting the trend that web analytics is just another extension of what they've already been doing in terms of statistics and looking at the business beyond just the bottom line, it's becoming more and more common for people who are not analysts, who are not data scientists, to start asking the right questions. What's our ROI, and what kind of turnover do we have? How loyal are the customers? And what can we do with our marketing team to improve every month, every quarter, every year? And how can we leverage the current technology of web analytics to maximize that impact? So this is what I call an example of bridging the digital divide. And I credit that to companies like Apple, which, if we're being honest, kind of pains me a little bit because I hate Apple. But I admire their strategy of taking computers and they made it cool again. They brought it to every home, or at least that was the goal. And they made it so that it wasn't just the techie people in their garage who built computers as an elaborate hobby. Okay, they made it cool for an ordinary guy or girl to have a home computer, and they made the GUI, the graphic user interface, so that they didn't have to use lines of code in order to accomplish something like checking their bank balance or performing some kind of basic programming or whatever the case may be. That strategy paid off for them, and other areas are being affected by it. And Google Analytics is a strong example of that. Lots of people are using Google Analytics that 5 years ago would never have considered taking market analysis seriously. But now, with just a few clicks, it's possible to take a look at where a company is and exactly what can be done to improve the situation. And investors are taking the tool and examining what stocks are doing and what they can do to improve their profits and so forth, because it's less and less complicated. The complexities are still there beneath the surface, but the interaction and the user interface, the user experience is becoming greatly simplified. And that's an area that's always been of interest to me. So what brings us to that is, most notably, web analytics is being accepted by people mostly due to the visual dynamic of dashboards. We've talked a little bit about dashboards in our classes, and that's really super important because you will be seeing that again and again in your studies. Dashboards are critical for understanding and communicating data analytics to an audience that does not understand all the math and the analysis that goes into data analytics and predictive analytics. It's much easier to communicate something visually to a non-technical audience if you use charts, graphs, animations, simplistic images that people can relate to much more than simple number charts and spreadsheets. So with that, we can look at where we are and consider our modern trends. So first of all, the rise of marketing tech. What we call marketing tech, tools that offer multiple services which are difficult to parse for non-technical users without experienced IT guides. And one example of that is a tool called Salesforce. And I bring that one up because I actually use that in academia. We have a tool in Salesforce and a version of it where we can go in and look at our courses, our students. We can interact with them directly, and we can chart progress and take bits of information and interpolate them and communicate ideas back and forth and try to model exactly what we can do to improve the school. So web analytics is not just for for-profit ventures. It's not just for banks. It's not just for companies that make widgets. Schools are a very, very big web analytics and dashboards as well. Secondly, companies are demanding more technical tools, things like SQL, Tableau, Python, R, RStudio, Visual Studio. So the implication here is that companies are seeking individuals that are skilled and certified in all these programming and cross-platform tools. And the funny thing is, if you watch the jobs boards like I do, I watch them like a hawk, even though I work full time, I'm happy at my job. But as a point of interest, I'm always watching Indeed and job sites like that, just to see what's going on in computer science, data analysis, and that sort of thing. And HR companies that write up those ads for the jobs are so, and I'm not saying this to be ugly, I'm saying just as a point of observation, they're ignorant of what they're asking for a lot of times, because there's still so much mystique in web trends and data analytics that they ask for things that don't exist. They'll say, we need someone who's got 10 years experience with Python 3. Python 3 just came out. You can't have 10 years experience with it. So that kind of thing happens all the time, where they'll ask you for 5 years experience of a charting program that literally just came out last year. And that's the kind of thing that has to come up in the interview. You put in for these things and you answer the questions, and the question might come up, hey, do you have X number of years with the software? And you say, well, yes, here's the thing. And this is what I tell people. When you go to an interview, never say no, even if the answer is no. I'm not saying lie. I'm just saying that if you have the skills and you have the certifications, you have what it takes to do the job, don't misrepresent yourself. But instead of saying, no, it's not possible to have 10 years or something that just came out, say, yes, about that. I've been doing that kind of work for at least 10 years. I've been doing it 12 years. The software that was mentioned, the ad just came out last year, and I am working with that, or I have worked with it, and I've done this project. And leave it on like that. Always start the answer with yes. Yes, but blah, 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 So keep that in mind when you're doing your HR. That one's for free. Another thing we see these days, chatbots. Far from perfect, but they're getting better all the time. They use NLP, natural language processing, and lots of jobs out there in NLP. It requires a good use of Python libraries, among other things. That's a popular NLP source because they use built-in tool sets that you can take in and you can deploy and do text analysis and sentiment analysis and that kind of thing. And if you, depending on what your program is that you're in, what your degree, you might end up with one of my classes a little bit later. We do some more advanced, machine learning. We do some of that. So it's kind of interesting. A lot of fun. A lot of fun. So final thoughts. As we round out today's class, I want to be sure that everybody out there is on board with what we're talking about, that you're putting some thought into your last couple of projects. I've seen a lot of progress, and I'm very happy with what I've been seeing. We are finishing, like I said, December 19th, and so it's important that you have modules 6 and 7 yearly thinking about what you're writing about. And as you get into some of it, it is speculative and there's a lot of research involved, but it's nothing that you haven't been looking at already. So I know that I'm going to be seeing some really good writing. I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I know that everyone there is more than capable. However, if you have any doubts or thoughts or questions about what you're looking at, I want to invite you to ask anything and shoot me a message at my email here. It's on screen. You can reach out to me at my LinkedIn. You can call or text me anytime. and I will respond as quickly as possible. And our next class is supposed to be Wednesday. So assuming nothing pops up with my other work, I'll be given one that day and posting it. So we will be covering some more, I believe, on module 6 and 7, probably talking about dashboards a little more. But until then, I hope everybody out there stays safe, stay healthy, and I hope that you have a great rest of the week. And we'll talk again soon. See ya.